Betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes it comes softly disguised as family, seated right beside you at the dinner table. For 58-year-old Nora Whitmore, Thanksgiving had always been a symbol of love and endurance. For 3 decades, she had polished her mother's silver trays, cooked her late grandmother's recipes, and welcomed her family home to her colonial house in Maplebrook, Massachusetts. But this year, the house felt different, quieter, colder, as if it already knew what was coming. The night before Thanksgiving, her phone rang. It was Eric, her oldest son, charming, successful, and increasingly distant. He spoke with forced cheer, confirming dinner plans and casually mentioning that his father, Graham, Nora's ex-husband, would be stopping by early to have her sign a few papers. Nora's hand froze mid-motion. The mention of Silver Pine Lodge, their lake property, made her heart clench. It was the one piece of their life together that had remained untouched by the bitterness of divorce. The place where her children had learned to swim, where her late son Ryan had laughed around campfires under summer stars. Graham had insisted years ago that the deed remain in both their names for tax purposes, he said. Now she finally understood why. She ended the call quietly. In her reflection on the polished silver, she barely recognized the woman staring back streaks of gray, tired eyes, yet a spark still alive behind them. She had loved deeply and lost deeply, but she had also learned. Thanksgiving Day dawned calm and crisp. Around 2:45 the afternoon, Nora was setting the table when the doorbell rang. Graham Whitmore stood on her porch, immaculate in his cashmere sweater, carrying a leather folder under his arm. Even after 8 years of divorce, he still walked as though the world bent around him. "Just a formality," he explained smoothly. "Developers are buying the lake house. Eric's been helping handle it." Nora listened in silence as he spoke, her heart tightening with every word. He was selling Silver Pine Lodge, her memories, her sanctuary, without even asking. He called it business. She called it betrayal. Before she could answer, the second wave arrived. Eric, his wife Tessa, their son Caleb, and a young woman Nora didn't recognize Paige Larson. To Nora's surprise, her daughter Lydia appeared too, having flown in unannounced from Seattle. The whole family gathered together under her roof for what would become the most defining dinner of their lives. From the moment they entered, Nora felt the tension humming beneath the surface. Graham's calm confidence, Eric's evasive eyes, Lydia's half smiles. Something was wrong. Something had been planned. In the kitchen, Eric appeared behind her, feigning concern. "Dad just wants to make things easier for everyone," he said, lowering his voice. "The sale will help all of us, Caleb's tuition, Lydia's business, even you, Mom." Nora turned slowly. "And what about what I need?" He blinked, confused. "You have this house, your pension. What else could you possibly need?" At that moment, Nora understood exactly how her son saw her, not as a person, but as an obligation, a relic, a source of convenience. She said nothing more. She simply continued preparing the meal, her silence sharper than any knife. When they finally sat down to dinner, everything looked perfect. The candles glowed, the silver gleamed, and the table shimmered with autumn colors. But beneath that perfection was the stench of deceit. Graham raised his glass with a smirk. "To family," he said, "to new beginnings." The words felt like a mockery. As they began to eat, Eric announced his good news: a lucrative transfer to Zurich, arranged by his father's company. Graham interrupted proudly, adding that the deal included funds for Silver Pine Lodge renovations. Then came the truth. He had already offered Eric his half of the sale proceeds once Nora signed. The room went quiet. Nora set down her knife. "And my half?" she asked. They exchanged glances, Graham, Eric, Lydia, a silent chorus of guilt. Then came the condescending explanations. "Family investments. Smart decisions. You'd always be welcome to visit." Every word cut deeper. And then, when Nora refused to be placated, Graham's tone turned cruel. "Stop being dramatic. This is about stability, about knowing your place." The words lingered until Eric, following his father's poisonous lead, snapped. The sound of his palm meeting her cheek split the air. China crashed. Everyone froze. Nora staggered against the wall, blood filling her mouth. Yet instead of collapsing, she straightened her back and smiled. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You just lost the one thing your father always wanted." That smile, calm, defiant, shattered the illusion of power in the room. For the first time, they saw not a frail woman, but the one person who truly held the cards. After the silence, Nora walked to the corner desk and opened a leather portfolio she had prepared days earlier. Instinct, she later called it. Inside were documents, deeds, and truths. The deed to Silverpine Lodge bore only her name. Graham had signed the transfer 3 years earlier, buried among corporate papers she knew he would never read. The forensic accountant's report detailed every offshore account, every hidden asset, every dollar he had stolen. She had kept it secret all these years, hoping for peace. But peace was no longer an option. Graham turned pale. "You'd destroy your own family?" "You destroyed it long before tonight," she said. "I'm simply acknowledging the truth." Then she named her terms: the full value of the lake house, repayment with interest for the hidden funds, and a public apology. When he called her insane, she smiled again. "For the first time in decades," she said softly, "I'm perfectly sane." Her children said nothing. Only Eric, his face drained of color, whispered that his father had told him she was unstable, hysterical, dangerous, that she needed to be shocked back to reality. And still, Nora's voice stayed steady. "Now you see which of us lost touch with reality." Without another word, she left the table. "Thanksgiving dinner is over," she said. "Please see yourselves out." That night, Nora drove through falling snow to Diana Crow's office, her old college roommate turned attorney. When Diana opened the door and saw the bruise on Nora's cheek, she simply said, "Let's begin." Together they worked through the night, establishing the Whitmore Trust, transferring every cent of Nora's assets beyond Graham's reach. They filmed her video deposition, documenting years of psychological manipulation and the events of the evening. By dawn, everything was in motion. At the Maplebrook Inn, she checked into a modest room under her maiden name. Finally alone, she let herself cry. Not for Graham, not even for Eric. For Ryan, her lost son, and for the years she had wasted living small so others could feel big. Then her phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. "I know what he did. I want to help. Paige." In a quiet cafe, Nora met Paige Larson, the only person brave enough to speak. Paige explained that Graham had already contacted a psychiatrist, one who worked with his company to have Nora declared mentally unstable. They planned to send orderlies to take her in for evaluation the next morning. But Paige had recorded their conversation, Graham's cold voice, Eric's weak agreement, the doctor's promise to handle it discreetly. Nora listened without emotion, then forwarded the audio to Diana. "Go home," she told Paige. "You've done enough. Be careful." When the girl hesitated, asking what she'd meant by Eric losing what his father always wanted, Nora answered simply, "Control." Then she drove north through the snow to Silverpine Lodge, the one place still hers, and waited for dawn. At 9 a.m., the call came. "It's done," Diana said. "Police served restraining orders to Graham, Eric, and Dr. Harper. The company board received your documents. They're calling an emergency meeting." Moments later, another call the chairman of Graham's firm. His voice trembled. "Are these allegations true?" "Every one of them," Nora said calmly. "I gave him a chance to make things right. He chose to destroy me instead. I'm merely returning the favor." By noon, it was over. Graham Whitmore resigned in disgrace, his empire crumbling under the weight of his own deceit. At Silverpine, snow fell softly outside the window as Nora sat by the fire, her phone buzzing with unanswered messages. Eric's tearful apologies. Lydia's fury. None of it mattered. She opened instead a worn envelope, Ryan's last letter before the crash that took his life. "Mom, I hope someday you'll see yourself the way I do, strong, brilliant, deserving of more. You once told me that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away, but sometimes the strongest thing is to stand your ground." Her tears fell silently, but her heart was steady. For the first time in decades, she understood what her son had meant. 6 months later, Silverpine Lodge shimmered under summer light. Nora had sold her Maplebrook home, donated most of its contents to charity, and made the lake house her permanent home. Graham's name had vanished from corporate headlines, replaced by words like fraud and indictment. Eric's reputation never recovered. Lydia disappeared from the public eye. Only Caleb, her grandson, visited sometimes, bringing Paige the girl who had dared to do what none of them would. One afternoon, Caleb asked quietly, "Don't you ever miss them? Don't you ever think about forgiving them?" Nora looked out over the lake, where Ryan had once laughed and splashed in the water. The sun's reflection danced across her face like forgiveness itself, warm, distant, unreachable. "No," she said softly, "some things can't be forgiven." The air was calm. The water glimmered gold. For the first time in her life, Nora Whitmore felt at peace not because she had won, but because she had finally stopped surrendering. In that quiet strength, she found what Graham could never understand: that the true inheritance of life isn't wealth or power or even love freely given. It's dignity reclaimed, the courage to stand your ground, and the peace that follows when you finally remember who you are.